Searching for a roommate can be a tedious and risky endeavor. You never know who's going to apply, and if they even have the funds to pay for their half of the rent. Worse yet, you don't know what their intentions are. Living with a stranger can be terrifying if they decide they're going to make your life a living hell for no particular reason. Today, we'll talk about a nightmare of a roommate whose story was a rabbit hole that got more and more frightening the longer I searched. Let's discuss the terrors of Jameson Bachman, also known as one of the worst roommates ever. Putting together a timeline of this guy was a challenge because I don't know what to talk about first, but let's just go in order. Jameson Bachman was high school friends with Ken Gutziet, and both attended Tulane University in New Orleans in 1976. Staying at the Sigma Chi fraternity house, the two were unaware of a very unfortunate event that would change and shape Jameson for the rest of his life. Ken had been eating in the university library when he was approached by the library assistant Randall Vidrine and asked to leave. When he refused, Randall called the campus police and had him removed. Months later, Randall would find Ken eating in the library once again, and this was apparently enough for him to turn homicidal. That evening, Randall walked past the fraternity house and got into a fight with Ken. This wouldn't result in much, but then Randall would return later that night with a knife and stabbed Ken to death. For many years after this, Jameson wouldn't be a known figure, but the event certainly had a hand in shaping who he would become. At age 45, he would take up an interest in legal training, going back to school to become a lawyer and studying abroad before obtaining his law degree. Peers described him as remarkable. Instructors at the University of Miami and Georgetown said he was very talented. One even stated that in 20 years of university teaching, I have encountered very few people of his caliber. Jameson would fail the bar exam in 2003 and never try again, but this didn't mean that he wouldn't find another use for his legal training. This was an important element in the torment he would soon apply to roommates who just wanted him to behave and pay his half of the rent. Let's explore his new hobby. One of the earliest accounts of Jameson's torment was in June 2006. After he was evicted from school, he was taken in by 43-year-old Arlene Herbedian. He promised he'd stay no longer than 2 months, but ended up staying in her railroad apartment for 4 years, all the while refusing to pay bills. After putting up with him for that long, Arlene snapped, and she slapped Jameson, resulting in him grabbing her throat. They filed restraining orders against each other, requiring them to stay 100 yards away from each other. In November 2010, she had had enough. Arlene and her landlord went to the courthouse to file eviction paperwork to get Jameson out. When he found out about this, he retaliated, saying that Arlene had come at him with a knife. This got Arlene arrested and required her to stay away from the apartment, effectively leaving the home to Jameson, who promptly dropped off her cats at a kill shelter. In 2012, he was taken in by Melissa Frost. When he claimed his home had been taken by Hurricane Sandy, she took pity on him. In the following months, he would start to take over the place, scuffing up floors, kicking down doors, and clogging the toilet with cat litter. He stopped leaving the house because she might change the locks on him. When he put his microwave out in the common area, Melissa tried to put it back in his room, but Jameson used the device to push her back out into the top of the stairs and yell at her not to touch his things. When his cat disappeared, he wrote a loud-sounding note that read, "You are the proximate cause of my cat's disappearance and presumed death. Do not communicate me again unless it's through your attorney." He felt he was invincible with the law on his side. Even when Melissa tried to help him find a new place, he simply laughed at her, saying, "You've got your whole life ahead of you. You're pretty, you're talented, and you've got this house." But then he added, "Well, you don't have this house anymore. This is my house." Getting Jameson evicted wasn't as easy as telling him to just leave. Eviction notices would rack up fees for the tenants, and then he would hit them with a counterclaim and force them to take him to court, which would cost even more fees. He would drag this on for months before finally moving out to then attack another tenant with the same problems. He also had a history of violence towards his victims. In 2012, Sonia Acevedo of Rockaway Beach let Jameson rent from her, only to become frightened by the man in the following weeks when he would kick at the doors during his outbursts. She said she had to hide in her room with the door barricaded. She was a prisoner in her own apartment for years with Jameson around. In January 2017, Jameson moved in with 40-year-old Neville Henry, who said he attacked him with the broken coffee table leg a week after moving in. When Jameson later left the house, he tried to sue Neville, adding insult to injury. The reason for Jameson's behavior was control. He simply wanted to make people miserable and got some kind of thrill out of forcing them out of their homes. Alex Miller, age 31, posted that she was looking for a roommate for her Philadelphia home on Craigslist in March of 2017. And now 60-year-old man named Jed Creek would respond after 2 weeks with an interest to meet the tenant and see if they could hit it off. Alex was working part-time and struggling to pay rent with the sudden departure of her roommate. Jed appeared at first to be a kind, thoughtful guy who enjoyed deeper conversation and Buddhist meditation. In a short visit, Alex would feel at ease around the man and agreed to let him move in immediately. The problem was, this was all calculated. Jed Creek was Jameson Bachman, and Alex had just let a parasite into her home. At first, everything was going well. Jameson paid her with a check that cleared, and he didn't have many possessions. He even came to her aid when one night one of her guests refused to leave, and he burst into the room stating, "Buddy, I live here too. She asked you to go, I'll ask you one more time, or I'll remove you myself." He seemed like the perfect roommate. That would all start to shift when on April 5th, 11 days in, Alex asked Jameson to pay for half the utilities, and he refused. He stated the bill took place before he moved in, and if she wanted, they could take this to court, which shocked Alex that it had escalated so quickly. But she thought fair enough. Maybe the bill didn't apply to him. From here, strange things began to occur. Alex came home to find all the light bulbs in the living room had been removed and put into Jameson's room. Several days later, 6 chairs had been taken from the kitchen and also stashed in the roommate's room, fashioned into a desk. When he spoke to Alex, he started to use legal jargon more often, stating that she was breaking the covenant of quiet enjoyment. He was starting to become annoying, but when he found a single cigarette butt in the toilet, he suddenly refused to pay rent for that month. He texted her, "You should know about the warranty of habitability." Upon researching the man's phone number, Alex's mother found out he was not who he said he was, and had a terrible history of doing this to dozens of other people. By May 2017, Alex had a plan to get Jameson out of her home once and for all. She arranged a send-off party with a bunch of friends, her mother, and a few neighbors, finding power and safety in numbers. The party thoroughly annoyed Jameson, who came out of his bedroom, dumped cat litter into the toilet like an upset child, then promptly left around 11 p.m. After the party wound down, Alex, for some reason, stayed by herself at the apartment and went to bed. Before dawn, she emerged thinking she could go to work, but Jameson had returned with a knife and came at her. "You've made a grave mistake," he growled, and sliced at her thigh with a knife. 2 officers arrived on the scene, finding Jameson to be polite, apologetic, and cooperative because he was a master at manipulating the authorities. He was charged with aggressive assault and taken to jail. On June 17th, Harry Bachman, Jameson's older brother, bailed him out, but knew living with him was a nightmare and didn't want to repeat those events. This freedom wouldn't last long, however, as Jameson would find himself back in prison after pulling up alongside Alex in his car and stating, "You're dead, bitch," before speeding off, which violated the protection order. With Jameson imprisoned, Alex and her mother were free to search his room, and they found an ominous supply of bullets, but no gun. On October 28th, Harry bailed him out yet again, and once again told him he could not stay with him and his wife Carolyn. Jameson didn't take too kindly to that, and on November 3rd, he just showed up in Harry's driveway. Carolyn called the police to go check on the home, and when they arrived later that day, they found a trail of blood leading to the front door. Inside the home was described as gory disarray. The dining room was decorated with blood splatter and drag marks amongst the broken dishes leading to the basement door. Beyond it, Harry Bachman was found dead of a gunshot wound on the stairs. Jameson had fled the scene in Harry's car, which was found in a nearby motel with bloodstains inside. SWAT kicked down the door of room 102 where Jameson had checked in and arrested the man. His preliminary reading was set on December 11th, but he wouldn't arrive in court that day. A few days prior to the date, Jameson Bachman was found hanged in his cell at the Montgomery County Prison. His story was presented on the Netflix show Worst Roommate Ever. I only spoke about some outstanding accounts, but Jameson did this to dozens of people. Nothing they did could appease him, because it wasn't about free rent. It was about watching his victims suffer. In the end, he took the coward's way out, but I feel for the friends and family of his brother who bailed him out again and again, only to meet his own end at Jameson's hand. Thanks for watching. For more true crime and horror, please consider subscribing. Game with me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, and as always, be well.